Let's get it where everybody can see it so we're on the same page about where we're going with the business. And then the second piece that I work on with the leadership team is having established the vision. Then we need to get traction in the business. And so this is the discipline, this is the accountability, this is putting the systems in place to be able to bring that vision to reality. So it's not just a dream, we can actually make it real. And then the third piece that I work on, and this relates to the whole sports analogy that we were talking about, is making sure that the team's working together as a healthy, functional, cohesive team. Because oftentimes they're not, right? And so at each level of this, I'm working with that team using frameworks and using systems to help them get there with that. There's a great quote. I use this just about every hour of every day. It's from James Clear from Atomic Habits. And the quote is, "You never rise to the level of your goals."
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Steve Morris with us today, and this is going to be a brilliant conversation because we don't do anything else. Everything's brilliant. We're just great that way. So Steve, as we always do in STS, no one knows Steve better than Steve. Steve, give us some backstory, bring us up to speed today, and we're going to get into the conversation.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for having me, Richard. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So, as you can probably tell as I start speaking, I've got an accent that's not from around these parts. I'm from down south, as we say, but we have to go further south than Alabama and keep on heading down to the other side of the planet. I'm from New Zealand originally. I've been here in the US for about 35 years now, and I grew up sailing in New Zealand. My first job right out of college was on a professional sailing team, and then what brought me to this country was designing multi-million-dollar racing yachts for high-performing teams. So sailing has been a huge part of my background, but now I'm here in Colorado. I couldn't get any further away from the sea if I tried. Different phase of my life. But that's the 30-second brings you up to speed.
Well, you're like me in 9. I lost my business. It was collapsing. I decided I will never be tempted with that business, either sculpture or water fishing again, so I'm going to do something completely different. And I haven't touched it. Like you can't be tempted.
Mm-hmm.
You're just in a place where you can't just walk down to, at least in Chicago, you can still get Lake Michigan. I could go down and get on a boat if I wanted to, but yeah, I like that. So so let's get into what you left sailing and yacht building and designing to what now? What's the big thing now?
So now, and actually for the past few years, I've been business coaching. And so it all strings together actually in a logical progression, but we go through this wandering path of life. When I was working with these really high-performing sailing teams, and even in fact, my first job out of college, as I said, I'm working as part of a high-performing team, getting a boat ready to go sail around the world. So I really got to experience. I went from studying mechanical engineering to being at the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning and lifting weights and getting strong enough to go out sailing with the team. And we were getting the boat ready, which meant going out and doing a lot of trialing and testing, a lot of training of bringing the crew together to get the boat in top-notch condition to go sail around the world. Then as I transitioned into actually designing boats, and this is where my mechanical engineering skills came back into the foreground again, working with really, really high-performing teams, I got to sort of really experience once again like what it felt like when I was in the middle of a really great team where everybody's got each other's backs, we're aligned, literally sailing in the same direction. And But I also got to experience, what it was like on teams that didn't make it, right? And teams where, frankly, we had all the resources we needed, but the team didn't gel together. And at the time, being an engineer working with these teams and naval architect, I just didn't have the tools to kind of really understand why one team was doing really great and another team wasn't. It has driven me on the rest of my journey over the last few years of just going into that curiosity and that passion about how do we build really great teams. And so it all links together, and that's what I now come and work with my clients. I help them look at their team and really figure out, do we have the right team here? Are we all aligned? Are we all heading towards the same goal? And are we doing the things that we need to do to really truly be our best as a leadership team of a business?
So let me ask you, because everyone's thinking this. You go from sailing, okay, so again, high performance, physical, right, endurance. I mean, there's all this stuff. You're going around the world or whatever you're doing, right? So what's the transition like? I mean, well, how does that really cross over into business? Because I'd hear that myself too, right? There's this, how do you equate that? Sport's totally different. They have that whole separation. People like to, put things in boxes. So kind of tell us how you've bridged that and how it really does apply to business in a really big way.
Well, I think it's a great insight, Richard, and a good question to go into, because, and so what comes up for me is, of course, it's people, right? People are people. And so in a high performing team, sailing team, any other sports team, and also a business team, it really is all about how do we get a group of individuals to come together into an aligned vision and to figure out the mechanics of how we work together to get to where we want to get to. And, so one of the analogies I use when I'm starting to work with a business team is, if you've ever watched a group of 6-year-olds playing soccer, right? The entire mob of kids is chasing around and following the ball. What happens, when you grow up and you mature, is you end up, learning that actually it's more effective if we get into our positions and we start passing the ball, right? And so this is really, I think it's the same thing too, oftentimes in businesses, that without a system in place, we're just a group of people that are just, chasing the ball around everywhere. When we put a system in place for how we work together, then everybody gets into their positions, right? And they start passing the ball, right? And we can be a lot more effective as a team. So it all comes down to the dynamics of a group of individuals coming together and forming themselves into a team. So there's definitely lots of crossovers and commonality there.
Yeah, I think what people don't understand, Steve, sometimes is that everyone thinks, well, yeah, we're all trying to win. Okay, well, yeah, okay. It's like a given, right? That's the whole, we get it, but it's the process that they don't understand. And I remember youth soccer as an example. So I didn't play. We played in gym class in high school, right? Like early in high school. And I understood this innately. Why is everyone run? But these are 14, 15-year-olds. They're not even 6-year-olds. I get it. But these guys, I'm like, you guys, you got to spread out how we can't win. We can't win if we're doing this. So you guys aren't, they don't understand the strategy of the game, right? They don't understand that. So there's always strategy involved in this kind of stuff. And there's positions. Again, that's why I love what you said about sport, because everyone's got a position, Again, I'm not a huge sports guy. I mean, I'm a boxer, black belt, I do all that stuff, right? I like those individual things. So my team experience, when the Marine Corps, that was kind of team-like, but still there's a lot on us. And there's a lot on us as an individual as well. But, that kind of thing. But understanding how they all work together, whether it's this play or that play or however they're doing that, when you're dealing with, and you said it right, they're people, okay? And if you have any exposure to the human race, you understand that no two are alike. Okay, and the goal, I think, is that getting that alignment you're talking about, really trying to get that in a I'm going to air quote work setting, right? But you really have to break down, well, what is the vision? What's the goal? What's the actual outcomes, right? Is that a big part of what you're doing when you're working with these guys?
100%. So there's 3 main areas when I'm working with a business leadership team. The first one is, yes, vision, as you're talking about. So where are we going with this business? right? Getting that articulated, because oftentimes, it's maybe in the business owner's head. And sometimes, I'm just saying sometimes, that doesn't get communicated that clearly, right? There's an assumption that everybody knows where we're going. Well, let's get that out. Let's get that written down. Let's get it where everybody can see it so we're on the same page about where we're going with the business. And then the second piece that I work on with the leadership team is having established the vision. Then we need to get traction in the business. And so this is the discipline. This is the accountability. This is putting the systems in place to be able to bring that vision to reality. So it's not just a dream, we can actually make it real. And then the third piece that I work on, and this, relates to the whole sports analogy that we were talking about, is making sure that the team's working together as a healthy, functional, cohesive team. Because oftentimes they're not, right? And so at each level of this, I'm working with that team using frameworks and using systems to help them get there with that. There's a great quote. I use this just about every hour of every day. It's from James Clear from Atomic Habits. And the quote is, "You never rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." And I've seen this in my own career, and I see it, with my clients and the people that I work with, is we can put the goals up there. Great. Awesome. But what's the system that we're putting in place to have those goals be achieved? And you mentioned working in the Marine Corps. I mean, the services are all about setting the goals, but we train. We get the systems in place, because when people start shooting at us, it can go sideways quickly.
Yeah, they're kind of masters of dumbing it down. They take dumbing it down to a whole new level. And if you haven't experienced it, you can't appreciate it. But it's effective on those levels, so that way you can make things repeatable. I remember my younger brother was in the Air Force, and he was an F-16 electrician. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds like complicated. He goes, well, really, like if there's a problem with the panel, he goes, we just remove the panel and put a new one in. He said, that's so, and then that gets sent off to someone who knows what they're doing, and they fix it, right? But they've got that, right? They have this thing, and I'm being very general. There's other things they do, but the idea was they realized no one's going to fix this. The goal is what? Get that plane back in the air, right? So let's do that, and then someone else will work on this. So you're just a replacement part guy. You bring it in, but that's good because you can do it. You can do it quickly. You do it right. Because in an F-16, I know this little squirrel trail here, you drop a screw down in the fuselage, guess what? The plane can't fly till you find it because it'll tear it apart. So, if worst case, you got to be a non-screw dropper. Okay, have a magnetic screwdriver, whatever I don't know. I have no idea. But little things like that. But I love that concept. When you talk about, you create the system, and I'm a big systems guy. I love it. I know the need for it. I teach it right with my clients. But the whole idea of a system, and this is why I want your thoughts on this, Steve, because a system's built, we put people into systems, not systems into people. So we want to make sure that we can plug, because that worker, that athlete, someone's going to get removed from the game, or they're going to leave or something. So the next person has to be able to come in as easily and quickly as possible to, like the F-16, get back in the air. It really is the effectiveness of this system that you have to create prior to training the people to actually operate in the system, because that's still a problem too. Do you run into that? Or like the people I got a great system, but the people don't work in it. So maybe there's something wrong there.
Yes, well, so I do similar work with my clients. Yes, so number one is really figuring out, we call it, what the secret sauce for the business is. It's usually a set of 6 to 10 core processes, right, that really define how the system runs. Something like a people process. How do we find people? How do we onboard them? How do we take care of them? How do we move them on when they need to be moved on, right? Marketing processes. How do we go out there and create demand? Sales processes. How do we go close orders and bring the business in? operations processes. How do we deliver our service? How do we make the widgets that we're making? Accounting processes. You wouldn't believe how many people I come and start working with, and they've got, so much accounts receivable outstanding and things like, what's the process for getting that money in, right? Customer service processes. So the point of all this is you're talking about, yes, let's identify what these are. They're different for every business, but let's get them identified. Then let's get them documented, and we use what we call a 20/80 approach. So because we realize everybody's busy, so we document the 20% of the major steps that kind of map out about 80% of the process. I'm not about creating a 700-page standard operating procedure manual, right? Because a lot of the clients I work with, small businesses, they don't have time for this. If we want the 700-page SOP, we'll go back to the Marine Corps and the Air Force, right?
Right.
They've got that stuff, right? But, we're busy in these small businesses, so we try to simplify it. And then to your point, having established that, we need to get them, these processes, what we call FBA, followed by all. That means everybody's been properly trained. Anybody who touches the processes knows the best way and the right way of doing these things. And we're leading and managing people to do it the best way, the right way every single time, right? And so to ultimately get the result that you want from the process, are people doing it the right way? Are they doing it with the right frequency? Are they getting the result that we want from the process? All of those things. So we tie all that back together into a loop. And of course, make sure the process is getting updated. I think usually when you just kind of map something out for the first time and then you go and try it, you'll probably find, well, we missed this step here, or there's a gap in understanding there. So obviously that needs to be filled in. But the systemization of a business is the magic thing that gets the consistency that then allows the scalability. Like, a lot of people want to grow their business. They've got the grand vision for where we want to get to. But without getting the consistency and the systemization in the business, you're just going to scale up chaos.
Yeah, and so true. It's, what I have to remind business owners too, Steve, is like, okay, there's growing and there's scaling. They're two different things. Okay, you can grow, and for one thing, growing costs a lot more than scaling, okay, because you're growing. But in the growing part of that is building the systems, because you can grow, I'm air quoting grow, without doing systems, but it's going to be miserable. It's going to be a horrible experience. Trust from a guy who knows, okay, who tried that way. And a lot of these businesses, we can run really hard and do things. In the beginning, I call it ignorance on fire. Right, we could just go and we're going to make things happen. We're going to do that, but eventually we hit that point. And usually, for like a lot of my people, when you're in the service or trades industry, you get to $1 million a year in revenue. And I'm just going to use revenue as kind of a guide here. And like, you can do that by yourself. You can do it. You can wear the 9 hats. You can do all the extra work that you shouldn't do, but you're doing it anyways because you're getting it done. But then you start crossing the 2 and 3 million. That's not doable by yourself. First, you're going to need people. Okay, but even more than people, you need these systems, these processes. Like you said, you had a really good thing about receivables. I was the king of not collecting because I am on to the next thing. I did that already. I don't want that dirty money. Okay, that's not who I am. I'm an artist. I'm out front doing this stuff. Like, someone else should be collecting the money. Like, I need a pit bull to go get my money. Because they just ignored it. And it's the dumbest thing. You'd think like you'd be driven to like actually get paid. But as owners, a lot of times we're out right doing the next thing and doing that. And you're exactly right. It's like you're hitting the payables. You're getting those done because like you owe someone. But hey, these people owe you. So it's that cycle that you get into. And cash flow is king. Okay. And if you're not getting those receivables, it's brutal. So yeah, that's one of my initial focuses. With business, like, well, how is that looking? Do we have the cash flow and stuff?
I see the same thing too. I mean, it's sort of like you've got those spears on the wall behind you there, Richard, and I do see that sometimes and quite often, the business founder, is the passionate, pointy end of the spear, right? Going out there, developing new business, what's on the horizon, going after it. Yes, the collecting the cash, that's kind of like down the other end of the
Right.
down the other end of the spear. But to your point, like if you don't do that, cash flow is the lifeblood of the business, and you'll be running out of cash, like working hard, running like heck, developing all this business, but then there's nothing in the bank at the end of the month. So we just put a system in place to correct those things, right? That's all we need.
Let me ask you, Steve, do you find, this is what I found, go to any business owner, every business owner, and you say, we should systemize your business. You really should for all the reasons we've already talked about, and there's plenty more. And they'll say, yeah, I need to do that. Absolutely. I say, okay, well, when should we get started? I'll work with you. And they'll go, well, I'm not going to do it. Okay. So I don't have the bandwidth for that. I can't do all that. So what are you going to do? So what's your approach? I know you've heard this. I can't be the only guy who hears this from owners because they just don't have the bandwidth to do all this. And it's work. Okay, we're not snapping our fingers and you got these magic little, I got the perfect software for you, right? So let's talk about that a little bit because I want people to have kind of a grasp on reality here with this stuff, because it sounds great, but like I know you've overcome this stuff, this resistance, if you will. So let's talk about that a little bit, if you would.
No, I've seen the same thing for sure, Richard, and I just it comes up often when I start working with clients at the beginning and I'm introducing these concepts and they're like, oh yes, we're going to get all of this done by the end of next quarter. And I just have to say, okay, I'm going to lean in as your coach with love right now and tell you, I don't think you're going to get this done because I've just seen across many businesses, as you're talking about, it takes a lot of time and energy and work. So let's just start at the beginning. And let's, eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? So, that's where I do get them to like, okay, let's just get the list of the processes you want to document, and then just pick one, right? And just pick one, and let's get that one done first. And then you're going to feel so much better because you've got one process. So what's the one process that would truly get you the most leverage right now in the business? Let's pick that one. And it might be something like, just getting your accounts receivable down, right? And if with that one process, they'll have some money in the bank and then they can start hiring people, that sort of thing. Or it might be sometimes, other businesses, it's like, well, we don't really kind of have a great marketing process in place. I can always do with more leads. I've never really kind of met a business that didn't want more leads.
Right.
So,
and then what you do with them, right? It's like, well, yeah, exactly. And that's a big thing. We could spend a whole hour on sales processes, right? Because that's a big thing, and most small businesses, especially, they don't have any sales process, and it's I do it, and it's some work. It's not a week's worth of work. Okay, it's pretty intense. So it depends on the levels that they're operating at, but. Most people are awful at sales to begin with, just the whole selling. And then now you got someone who's awful at sales to go sell without a process. Okay, that is the perfect recipe for disaster and failure.
Right, yeah. Well, and I think too, you sort of referenced, you mentioned before, like, trades and contracting businesses and things, right? That's sort of what it takes to go from, a person in a truck to now we've got a team and now we've actually got a place and scaling up. And, I was working with some clients a few years ago and, one of the magic little things they did was hired somebody to answer the phone, right? So that when somebody called, there was a real live human being picked up the phone and dealt with got the information, dealt with the phone call and things like that. And from that little thing, so much other stuff happened because what I see is so many other businesses, if you're not answering the phone, somebody wants a plumber, right? Because, the toilet's blocked, the drain's leaking, you start going down the phone list, right? And you start calling people. Okay, first one, voicemail. All right, well, leave a voicemail, hang up. Phone the next one, Phone the next one. A live human being answers the phone, says, yes, we're going to have somebody out there in 3 hours. They've got the business, right?
Done.
And the person who's, checking their voicemail at the end of the day, job's gone, right? So I know it's a hard thing, but interestingly, I think with AI and other things happening these days, it's becoming easier and easier to put systems in place to be able to capture the phone calls. Because these clients I was talking about, they answer the phone and business grows. They capture the business.
It's funny. It's funny because this very morning in the gym, I have a newer client and he's working out the gym. We started talking about just that. I said, do you need to get a VA to answer the phone? Because talking about his guys coming in, we're trying to, rein in the time he's working, right? Like, hey, he's a tree guy. Hey, a tree falls in the house at midnight in a storm. Like, they need to talk to someone. Okay. Yes. Like that's a thing, right? I mean, so voicemail's good and whatever, but like, if you can do it, and what's really strange, and you've seen this too, I'm sure, people call at the oddest times for things. 1 a.m, they're calling about, roofing, or they're calling about a floor, or like they just have this thing and they're up and they call and if they actually get a human being at that time, like you said, it's kind of a done deal. Worst case, you are getting an appointment set right there. Because that the VA has the ability to set the appointment, and man, you can show up. You're first to go. They'll not call anyone else. They'll stop calling. They're not going to get the proverbial 3 estimates, right? They got you at 1 a.m. You're my guy or girl, right? So it's the thing you said. See, that's really important for people to understand now. When you talked about AI, and there's AI voice now, and all this cool stuff that's rapidly changing, but it's a level of service that is so affordable. Okay, like I had another guy earlier this morning too, same thing. Like, you're not going to have that person in-house. You can't afford it. And they're not going to want to work 10 hours a week. They want to work 40. These off hours and stuff, they're not going to have that. So we've created methods to overcome this, right? There's new resources out there that people need to be aware of. And experts like you can come and have these referrals, if you will, and build. It's a simple fix in general, simple, right? But man, it changes your business. Just like all systemization, but I think little things like that make such a difference, and it gives you the perspective of being a larger company than you may be.
Well, sure, yeah. And you get to being a larger company by, bringing in work and executing it really well, right? Getting the 5-star Google review and also executing the work profitably too. I mean, I think that's the other, all of these parts of systemization. I mean, you're talking about if you don't have a system for sales, right? So, going out there, it maybe takes a long time to work up an estimate. Okay, you've lost the business because they've gone somewhere else. If you can't quote the job accurately, then you end up, finding yourself short, right? Because when you've gone and done the install work, you haven't been able to execute that profitably. All of those little things, they just chip away at your ability to kind of really get your head above water. And so, what I love seeing is just taking that systems and there's a huge thing about, the psychology of this in my mind, and when I'm working with my clients. And that's, as you sort of alluded to before, like it can be a lot of work to sort of take on this systemizing the business. And sometimes people don't want to do it because maybe they sort of see that it might, or feel that it might reflect on themselves, that I'm not an organized person or something. But what we really want to do is just the psychological step is just to look at a system is just a system, right? And if the system isn't working, we just need to go find a different system. Go look at what somebody else is doing and copy that and just put a different system in place and try that out. It's not about you as a business owner being deficient in some way. It's just a system, right? And we just want to, as a system, is it working or not working? Easy enough answer. Working or not working? Not working, go find another one, right? This is where coaches, right, come in, right? Because we have a lot of experience looking across a lot of different clients. So we've been in business ourselves. And so we can suggest, we can ask questions, we can point people, we can give them resources. go get another system. It doesn't need to be something that you procrastinate around and ultimately become a roadblock to growing the business.
Yeah, I think that's the good point right there. I probably can make a very correct general statement is no one starts building their systems too early. Okay.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So it's always this afterthought. It becomes a necessity for survival, right? For growth, stuff like that. So it's always hard because people want to, they start a business again. I mentioned before, ignorance on fire. You're wearing 9 hats because that's how you begin a business, and we get that, right? This can be a year or two, but like I try to encourage people too. If I get to them early, and it's a challenge working with startups to begin with, so it's not always it's not my niche, but as they go, when I go into the mentor position for startups, which means I can give them this off-the-cuff advice and not be held responsible. Okay, when you're a mentor, a little bit different. So I'll assume the mentor role, and I'm like, I encourage them to begin systemization yesterday. Like you need to, in the littlest ways. You don't have to do every single thing because you'll lose your mind. But like, what are those little things that they begin to understand systems? Because I think what I try to do is you try to make them a systems thinker. Because a lot of them are not a systems thinker, right? That's kind of their problem, until the light bulb goes off and someone like you talk to them where I say, well, what about this? And this? Well, I guess, is there something for that? And like, well, yeah, but we don't know, right?
Yeah. Well, that systems thinking approach it's brilliant because I think, I can sit down with clients and say, okay, what's, looking at the horizon, what's the vision, where are we trying to get to on the horizon? And they can articulate that. And then, that next level down of systems thinking is, what we would call critical success factors. I know that's a big word, but, it's very simply like, what would have to be true for your vision to come to reality, right? So, okay, we want to, we're a $3 million business now. We want to be a $10 million business in 3 years. Okay, well, what would have to be true for that? Probably one of the things that would need to come up would be, we've got the business systemized. We've got a call center. We've got a sales manager with a sales team, right? And they are going out using documented scripts and sales materials and things that we've proven out and we've homed in on, what are the successful scripts that convert people. We've got, our operations teams dialed in, right? We've got our accounting, all of these things. But then people can also paint a larger picture as well, like what else would have to be true? Well, we're giving people benefits. We've got paid time off. We've got a headquarters location. We've got a warehouse. We've got inventory now, so I can stop people running down to Home Depot and killing me with like these little purchases from Home Depot all the time, right? And just so you paint this picture of what must be true for us to be running a $10 million business. And then here again, this is sort of, for me, the psychological side of this that I'm very, very keen about, and this sort of ties all the way back to, the sailing and being a high-performing team, is ultimately what I call your sort of inner mental stance. Everybody always has an inner mental stance. So just as you're standing at the baseball plate about to, hit, you set your feet to your right so you can go hit a ball. Everybody has an inner mental stance about how they kind of see situations. And the inner mental stance of somebody running a $1 million or $2 million business is great. But you can imagine what must be true is that when you're running a $10 million business, you're going to have an inner mental stance of somebody who's running a $10 million business. And there's going to be a shift that's going to have to happen, from 1 million to 10 million in terms of how the business owner and everybody else on the leadership team sees themselves, sees their inner mental stance. When they're looking at situations, how do they go and attack those things? And I saw this, many, many years ago with my sailing career. I got to meet billionaires, right, who are our clients. And I was always kind of like, oh, interesting. This is how you become a billionaire. This is how you become somebody worth $5 billion. I can see that there is a different inner mental stance that those people have. And it was very, once again, I didn't kind of really have all of the nuts and bolts pieces of it back then, but I see it now, and particularly with the work I do, is that growth, not just of the team, but of the individuals. Because ultimately the culture of a business, I think, really comes down to the collective inner mental stances of the people standing there at the table. And if we can get that shifted and set in the right direction, magic happens.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think another thing that people leave out, we talked about doing systems early, right? The earlier the better. That's all good. But I think that aspect, that mental stance, that's a good way you put it. Like that has to be trained, right? If they're going to go, if you want your company to go from 2 million to 10, well, it's just like another team drafting a better player, right? They want to go to this level. They're missing this one guy who now they have an opportunity to bring him on to fill that space, right? Who can already have that stance for that winning position, right?
Yes.
So I think we have to approach that with our team, whether it's 3, 5, 10, 50, 100 people. Like that has to be in your priority list, somewhere in their levels of advancement, if you will, in their positions. You almost have to like mix that into the recipe. Everyone's got to be working on this. Just thinking, and I'm just kind of rebounding off what you said here. I think that'd be a really interesting application of this, because I do like levels inside positions for companies, right? So you have, time and qualification. You have a certain amount of time you have to be there, and then you have a certain amount of qualifications you have to gain. And you keep moving up until eventually you can have a promotion to a different position. Well, this has to be part of that training because I always like to encourage owners to help make your people better, not just competency, but as people. And that ability to think at a higher level, to have that change that stance, that benefits them more than your job position. That benefits them in life and leadership with their family and directing their kids because we influence our children, right? Like we want them to achieve more than we do. That's the goal, right? I tell all my kids, you got to be better than me. Yeah. And that's not a high bar. I'm just kidding. But you got to outdo me. So that becomes kind of what our thought process when I teach them and work with them. And I talk to them now. I say, oh, man, you are my one son who's in the Marine Corps now. He's 20. We did a podcast together. He's getting interviewed. And I'm listening to him going, you are like light years ahead of me at 20 years old. Holy cow. Yeah. Like the way he thinks, what he does, I'm like, I was an idiot at 20. I'm like, I like that. That's what you want to see, right? But as you walk through it, you saw these stages during life, and to compare that to a job where you're being taught these things, and you're being taught how to go to the next level, how to think differently, how to be a better critical thinker, how to solve problems, right? And become that, because that's who's going to help get you, because you're not going to get to the 10 million or 20 or 50 on your own. It's going to take your whole team, right? What's the Chinese proverb? You can go faster alone, but you can go further together.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's that, but they got to be skilled up to go. So
right.
I really like that.
Openings.
I really, really like that.
I mean, part of the work I do with my clients is we talk about systemizing the business. We also talk about structuring the business. So what's the right structure that we need to be able to get to where we want to go, to bring the vision to reality? And so I have a framework. We go through a very particular way of structuring the business that creates openings for people to step up into. Right? Because I need that business owner to step up from being a, $2 million a year business owner to a $10 million business. So we create that opening, right? And it's uncomfortable. I mean, I talk with my clients and I hear this, I used to be, in the weeds. I used to be doing all the work. I used to be doing all the sales calls. I was chief cook and bottle washer. Now I'm, the CEO of a $10 million business. I need to be different. I need to be strategic. I need to be looking out at the horizon. I need to be going to conferences. I need to be learning, right? And so, but all through the organization, we create these openings for people to step up into. And ultimately, what I see in my experience is some people step up, and some don't. And we can never tell.
Right.
It's just part of the journey that we're going to go on together is we're going to create openings and we're going to see who's going to step up. And the people that step up, they're your team. The people, and not everybody wants to, right? Some people just want to stay doing what they're doing, head down, and that's fine. We need everybody to be in their right place in the business. But truly, to be able to grow, we need people, we do need a team, we need a group of people to step up and to take the business to the next level.
Yeah, it's kind of remind them like, listen, you can raise your own ceiling. Those people want to stay there. They got a low ceiling. That's as high as they're going to go. No, but we want to, your point's well taken. You want to give them the opportunity to step into it. It's not a forced thing, but hey, you want to go here, you got a place to go. And for me in business, there has to be a place to go. Otherwise, your retention is going to be 18 months, 24 months.
Yep.
If they don't feel they have a path, again, when I talked about doing those levels, I want someone to come in as a potential new hire and see a path to success. Not I'm going to come in and put A into B, and that's what it'll do, and you'll get a 3.5% raise every year, and you'll get some benefits. And I know everyone doesn't think like me. I'm an owner. We're different. We're entrepreneurs. People got to have hope.
Yeah.
How can you just come and do that? You just know they're going to leave. I don't know. I mean, but I do know a guy, and I've shared this before at different shows, but I was down at a Dollar General warehouse, the original one in Kentucky. I'm down there consulting stuff, and there's a guy they point to. See that guy? He's on a forklift. This is his 50-year anniversary driving that forklift here. I'm like, dang. Okay, that's a unicorn right there. Ain't no one doing something for 50 years. I mean, like that, Then I'm thinking about all the things he's actually run into with that forklift. But it was just, I'm just it's like you just don't see that. You know what I mean? Yes. But there's a guy who's content. I'll use a good word. He's just content with what he's doing, and he's a darn good operator. He's still got a job, but 50 years, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't suspect that that's kind of the way things run these days. I mean, what I see with my clients is what you're talking about. You've got somebody who's getting $25 an hour for doing, whatever, but they're looking around like, how can I get $26 an hour? How can I get up to 30, right? And so, if you don't create the opening, if you don't create the path within your own business for that progression, for them to see that journey, then they'll probably go somewhere else for another buck, right? So, and that's hard, right? I mean, because trying to keep good people like everywhere across the board, like keeping good people in your business is so key. It's so much easier to keep good people than to try to find people.
Yeah. I think, Steve, when I look at it, and I know it's not maybe across the board depending on positions, right? But if you're not creating those paths, you're hampering your own growth in a big way. Because people advancing your company are going to grow with the company, going to help you scale that when the time comes. There's always going to be that, hey, there's this entry-level position, it's here, and we get it, but, hey, if they say 12 months, 16 months, we got a good ROI. Okay, on the hire. Like, that's great. It's when they leave in 2 months, that doesn't help us. But if I can get them, I get it. And either they may have a place to go, but they also may just leave. Because they're doing this, they're in high school or they're a college kid working, and we get it, right? I use fast food. They built their industry that way. I was telling someone yesterday, you got high school kids, and you got seniors, and you got a few middle-aged managers yelling at people, hating everybody. Okay, that's like the model. Okay, kids are going to stay for a day or a year or 2 years, maybe 3 at the most, and then seniors are doing it for something to do or supplement their income, and they're going to be. I mean, that's the model. Right now, until there's no people doing it, like in some of the McDonald's and stuff. So we just have to understand those positions that you may have that, but really in general, if you want to expand your business, because there's, we all know there's only two directions: it's forward or backwards. And if you're not putting this stuff into play, you are going backwards. You have to give the people and here's another. This goes right along with systems. That implementation of that kind of strategy and make those openings for them. This is putting your growth on somewhat of an autopilot. You're not there like trying to wrangle people. It's like they have trajectory. So again, you can focus on that, what we call that 5% of the things only you can do. You can't be worried about it, but if you build a system once, now that's an operating procedure. This is how we do business here, part of the culture, And you've brought up a lot of really interesting pieces, Steve, that I don't think people think when they hear systems. Okay, that's a very broad term, right? But when you start to break it down like you did, it's really interesting to see the fruit it can produce. Right, it starts to make sense what people are talking about when they say that, because it's really easy for someone to tell you to systemize your business and walk off. It's the same thing when they tell you need work-life balance and they kind of dance off. They don't have it, but they tell you need it. We like the how-tos, right? I'm a results guy. I need how-tos.
Yeah.
And you've brought that today. It's really been great. I love it. Any final words on the overall systemization aspect and the things you bring to the table?
Well, I think, for me, the key thing is, as I was talking about, not just to sort of see systems as being sort of this external thing, but also to just realize, as a leader, there are internal systems as well. Like when you get up in the morning, do you reach for your phone and turn on TikTok and go down the rabbit hole of whatever clickbait thing that they, getting your attention? Or do you have a system, right, for getting your nervous system, your brain, your energy set right for the day? So I put together a free course. It's on my website at stevemorriscoaching.com, and it's just like 10 things that people can do at the beginning of their day. I call it Create Your Morning of Distinction, because it's a system. If you take control of your day, set your compass heading, and set off in the right heading that you want for the day, you're going to have such a better day. You can create your day to be what you want it to be. Because so many people say, I want to be more proactive. I'm tired of being reactive. Okay, got it. Well, let's start when the alarm goes off for you being proactive and get away from, the clickbait world, which is all about reaction, reaction, reaction. Anyway, so just ready to say that, one of my biggest lessons ultimately in all of this is that leadership is an internal journey. They say happiness is an inside job. Leadership's an inside job too.
Right.
And there are systems that you can put in place to step into your leadership in a business. And that's what I just love helping my clients do.
I love it, Steve. Yeah, I am a big morning ritual guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am. Yeah, look out. My first 4 out, but mine's 4 hours. Okay, I do 4 a.m. until, till 8, and like I am, and I love it. And it's all those things, man, working my brain, my spiritual, my workout, my body. I go to the gym. Like that stuff is just so, I can't tell you what it does for my day. Yeah. Like people, if you haven't experienced, you need to start creating that stuff. That's the first system you can do. Create it. And I'm like, I love it because nobody's up at 4 a.m. Even life is sleeping at 4 a.m. I am like in charge. I love it, so I get up. But it's just, this has been really awesome, Steve. It really is kind of a fresher look at systemization. We've had people on. I do a lot of this, but I really like kind of a fresher look at how this stuff goes. And I love the format. It's not your first rodeo, obviously, right? Far away from the boat, but hey, you know what? The concepts are there, and it's really awesome. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing this. And I want people to take this away. Get that course. Get Steve's course. Just do that. Like those 10 things. Is it 10 or 12?
Yeah, it's 10 steps. It's just 10 steps, and there's 10 videos. They're like 5 minutes max each, right? So the whole thing's like less than an hour, and you don't have to do them all. Not everybody's doing the 4-hour thing, except you and Jocko Willink or something.
Bring them on.
Yeah, but just take a couple of them and try them out. And when you start feeling better, when you start like feeling into your energy, this is something I sorry to digress, but just like years ago, and so many people say like, I don't have enough time, right? I have a time management problem. Well, what about if we look at it instead of time as being energy? Because when you're doing the things that you love doing and you're really great at, and you're in your zone of what we call your unique ability, your flow zone, right? You're getting energy, right? You've got all the energy for getting that stuff done. And the things that you procrastinate on, that drag you down, that stuff sucks away your energy. But working on your energy is the lever that truly gets you to the freedom and the point where the time stuff becomes more under control. So once again, just another system. And, the way you work on your energy, as you're pointing out, is you start at 4 a.m., provided you've managed to get your 8 hours sleep before that.
Yeah, everyone's got their thing.
Everyone's got their
thing.
thing.
My wife's a night person.
Oh my gosh. All right.
We've made it 25 years so far. I've accepted it. 9 o'clock, good night.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm in bed 9 o'clock. There's no, me and my oldest son used to who went to bed first. He was kind of 9 o'clock trying to slip in there, But yeah, this is great stuff. Energy is critical. Time management, as someone once told me, Steve, well, you don't manage time. You manage yourself in time. Time is time, And the last thing I'll say is, people always tell me they don't have time. They're so busy. And I give them just one. I go, you have less than 2 seconds to answer this question. How many hours in a week? And they go, I go, okay, you don't know. So how can you say, in all honesty, you don't have time? You don't even know how much you have, right? So and it usually always works. Okay. Yeah. But it's a good one. It's just, okay. So I just want you to understand you're making statements that you can't quantify. So
good point.
There's a system for that. Okay.
Yes, there's a system for that. Yes.
That's right. That's right. Well, Steve, this has been awesome. Thank you again for the time today. This has been fantastic. And for everybody else, we will see you on the next STS podcast.
And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.